Welcome to another episode of Another Man's Shoes. On today's journey, we are joined by Martyn Compton, former member of the Household Cavalry, severely injured after being blown up in Afghanistan, suffering 75% third-degree burns to his body. Whilst under attack, burnt, he was shot, severely injured, and still managed to return fire, hitting the enemy. Since leaving, he's gone through a tremendous recovery period and become an accomplished author, racing driver, father, and loving husband. What you're going to hear tonight is an exceptional story from one of the most inspirational men I've ever met. So, Martyn, welcome to the show.
No, thank you.
So, we've sort of called you on the show. It's called Another Man's Shoes, and you've got one hell of a journey that you're going to tell everyone about. And we've known each other now for a few years. We've been out, and you don't talk about things sort of too much. But I'm pleased that you've come on. You can sort of maybe explain a bit more about where you've been. So, as always, we sort of start off about where you're born, what you did as a kid, what were you like. So sort of just tell us a bit about where you're from and give us a bit of the backstory.
Yeah. I was born in Exeter. I'm from an early age. Moved out to Florida after losing my mother at a young age. So me and my dad moved out to Florida, lived there and went through kindergarten. And about 7, 8, Dad decided UK was our home turf, so we came back and sort of took root in Kent, a place called Staples, which is where I was brought up from sort of 8 onwards, really. At that point, obviously, I had to try and fit in again, meet new friends, and kind of went from there, really. And the guys that I hung around with through school were my best mates until 16, when I decided to join the army, just through kind of trying to get out of trouble. I was one of those kids that always the first one to do something and try it out, and sometimes got caught, quite often didn't. We used to be pretty good at running away. So the easier option was to join the army, much to my old man's dislike at the time.
Well, yeah, we'll touch on that in a minute. So I never knew you went to, you lived in Florida. So what was that like as a kid living out there?
Absolutely loved it. It was obviously completely different to Exeter. Yeah, completely different lifestyle. And as I say, I was only young, but kindergarten was definitely a good way to be growing up.
So Disney at the weekends?
Pretty much next door to it. So at that point, I was kind of sick of it.
That's amazing. And so then you sort of came home. Obviously, how did you do at school? Were you academic or you sort of more of a rebel?
Yeah, I wasn't bad.
Outside?
I was sort of middle of the road. Yeah, always quite often in trouble, a bit of a joker. Done all right at school, and that was probably about it. Enough to write home about.
But then that's why you joined the military, I suppose, to sort of get away from it. And
exactly that, yeah.
So how did that work? You sort of went down to the careers office and said, right, I want to be a soldier.
Yeah, literally, I just decided that there was no work around the area. I thought, right, I'm going to go and see what the sketch is all about. I went down to Chatham, to the Army Careers there, and he went, yeah, you can do your BARBS test if you want right now. I was like, oh, okay, sweet. And that was kind of me, committed there and then.
So did you decide what regiment you wanted to be then?
Yeah, at that point, you do your BARBS test, obviously, and kind of let you know whether you're thick as fuck and you need to dig holes or you've got something about you. And at that point, I kind of did have something about me. So REME was one of my options, and I decided to go down the REME route.
So the REME, if anyone was listening, they're the mechanical engineers, so they're the guys that fix the vehicles and what have you when the rest of us go out and break them.
That's it, yeah. I always thought I quite like messing about with cars, even now, so I thought REME, spannering kind of goes together. I'll give that a crack and see where it goes. So
you do your BARB test, which is the entrance test, isn't it? Well, it used to be. I don't think they do that anymore.
That's it, yeah.
But it's like they ask you a number of questions, a bit of maths, a bit of English. You used to have that little. It was like a computer game, wasn't it? You had to. They show you where, like the cannonball that fires, and you had to guess the trajectory of it and where it lands.
It, yeah. Yeah, if you're really good and you've got your crayons left, then you're not infantry.
Yeah, and so you decided to join the Ream. You go do your basic training.
Yeah, we went to phase 1, where you basically get thrashed and become a soldier. And it was the old days where they used to be able to thrash you properly.
Yeah.
Not that I'm that old, not as old as you. Like that. We had windows and bedding.
Yeah, it was hard when we joined the Roman army, and so. But then you didn't stay in the Ream, or you didn't. You transferred across to a different regiment.
No, so I got to phase 2, and phase 2 is where you then learn your your next phase of where you want to go in life in the army. So obviously my next phase was the spannering course. I forget the actual name, but spannering course.
Yeah, changing wheel nuts.
That's it, yeah. And at that point, there were so many lads trying to go through the same sort of course that there was a backlog. So we had this, I forget what the platoon was called, but basically something, it was like a waiting, holding platoon where you go on some sort of different courses, bit of canoeing, rock climbing here and there and all that sort of stuff, which is great up until a point where you actually want to get on and get out into the real world in the army. But at that point, I was there for too long and too many options came open, and I started speaking to a guy that was a lifeguard in the Household Cavalry, and that sounded all rosy. So transfer went in and I joined the Household Cavalry.
Yeah, and so this is where a lot of people get confused. I mean, most people think, all right, you join the army, you get a gun, you're a private, and that's it. But then you got then you're called lifeguards, Household Cavalry, and you get all these obscure ranks, and it gets me. I don't understand. Also, the lifeguards is that the regiment or is that the rank? What's the lifeguards?
No, so the regiment is the Household Cavalry.
Yep.
It's then split into the Blues and Royals and the lifeguards.
Okay.
But it amalgamated several years back, so it's now one regiment. They used to be very much split. But the only difference now is lifeguards wear red kit, ceremonial, and the Blues wear blue kit when they're sat on the horses. So it's mainly ceremonial duty where it's any different.
So basically, the Household Cavalry are the guys at Buckingham Palace and outside Horse Guards Parade, sort of sat there with polished boots.
Yeah.
So did you go down?
We have the ceremonial side. No, I was never interested in cleaning the kit so much. It is mainly very old school. It's now they go into the ceremonial side before joining the regiment, just because it is very old school. It's very strict on a rank structure, completely different actual soldiering when you get to the regiment.
Okay, so
when I say actual soldiering, I mean like in the Greens, you know.
Yeah, because I imagine that it doesn't appeal to everyone. Sort of sitting around on a horse and cleaning your kit with a lot of the bullshit that probably goes with it. It's
exactly that. Yeah,
it's probably only for a select few. I mean, pretty good though for picking up women, I imagine.
Yeah, it's great when you're a young lad, which is why a lot of them go that way. But
yeah,
it's mainly for my sort of area. It's mainly for going out there for promotion.
Okay. So then, where'd you go? So you finished your training. You sort of transferred regiments. You've joined the cavalry. What did you do then? You go to Bovington, do your sort of tanks and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So went straight to Bovey. Learned how to drive. I was only a young lad at that point. I could literally just about drive a car, and that was flat out everywhere. So I had to learn to slow down and get in a tank and drive one of them at speed.
That's not bad, is it? What, you're 18, 19 years old, you're cutting around, driving a tank? It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. You'd definitely get out of the way of people with L plates on, on a tank.
And so where'd you go after that? So when you finished all your training, where was your first unit?
Straight, that's the other thing with the House Cavalry, which is kind of the appealing thing, that you don't travel to any other unit. You stay in Windsor at the time. They've now moved, but it was literally at Windsor, and then you go on tour from there as a regiment or as each sort of section, you know.
That's good. So yeah, you all stay together as a group because in our regiment you used to we would just move around individually. So we'd do 3 years in one place, and then on our own, we'd just sort of move off to somewhere else, go to the other side of the world. So you're constantly having to sort of make new friends, reacquaint with each other, learn how each other works. It's much better if you can stay as a
regiment. It's great when you're young, but if you've got a family as well, it's not ideal.
So what point is this then?
One of the attractions.
When did you join? What year?
I joined in 2000.
Oh, 2000. So you go through the training, you're going through that. So where was your first tour then? Was Iraq your first sort of operation?
No, my first tour was Afghan.
So what was that in what year was that?
End of 05, yeah.
Okay. So you did Afghan, and that was, so you went out there as a regiment, flew out 05, and that was sort of like before the so-called shooting war was going to start, when they turned around and said, we're going to be out here and we're not going to fire a single bullet. Yeah,
it kind of went into my incident in 06, so it kind of went together, really. We sort of carried on.
So was that on your first tour, the incident?
Yeah.
So is that something you sort of talk about?
Yeah, so 2 days back from my incident, we were out there helping. We was out for 2 weeks out on the ground, based in Bastion, but we used to go out on sort of patrols. And at that time, we were out living in the desert for 2 weeks, which is hard enough for anyone, let alone in a scimitar, which is ridiculously like 100-odd degrees in there. But,
describe the scimitar.
Get used to it, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, people that wouldn't know what a scimitar
is. It's a small armoured tank. Not really sure why they put them out in Afghanistan. Like I say, it's pretty much like an oven inside. Your hot water that you're drinking, that's meant to be sort of cold, it is literally, you could put a tea bag in it, and you could cook off the front of the deck, so you got that hot.
Wow. How many of you were in
small tanks. So at the time, I was in a Spartan. So a Spartan is one that you can get people in the back.
Okay.
So there was three of us, and then the ones with the main guns on them, they've got three-man crews as well. The only difference with the ones where you can fit people in the back is you could, at a squeeze, get 2 more people in mine.
Okay. Pretty uncomfortable conditions, though, to be in for 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And then you got to carry all your kit, which is kind of strapped to the sides or wherever you can. You've then got like ballistic armour on the sides, which it does stop rocket grenades. It acts as like a porcupine effect around the outside of the tank. So it's designed to stop rocket grenades, which it did do a few times. And when we got back and thought, there's a rocket grenade stuck in the side of our wagon. What is that like?
Oh, so it's like the grid system, so it catches the fins and what.
Yeah.
So that's
get close for comfort, like, but
that's crazy, isn't it? You get out of the tank, sort of shaking yourself off, and you got a rocket-propelled grenade just sort of stuck in the side live.
Yeah. So, oh wow, that was close.
Quick selfie.
And you didn't even know about it.
So, I mean, before the incident, did you get into many contacts? What were the locals like? Were they fairly friendly? Did you? How did you get on?
The locals are brilliant. They really took to us being in the area. The trouble is, the Taliban and like everyone out there, the money is everything, and the Taliban was very corrupt with things like that. So the locals really went to town with things like that on them, and for us being there, it was a kind of relief, really, and they wanted to get back to how they used to live, you know.
Yeah.
The Taliban had just taken over the town, so
this is in Helmand Province.
Yeah, this is Helmand. Yeah, basically when Bastion was being made, we helped make some of where the tank park is, and obviously from years on it got bigger and bigger. But at that stage, it was pretty small, pretty much an airfield with a couple of tank parks wrapped around it.
So, and I suppose for people to try and understand, Bastion was the main sort of British and later sort of American and forces to camp out there, and it was absolutely huge, wasn't it? I mean, it was a city essentially. I think it was the size.
Yeah,
of New
well,
York
it wasn't that big at that
finished.
point. That's what I say. It was quite tiny at that point. It's pretty vague on what I do remember. I do remember the Americans around one side, and that was quite small. We used to go around there and rob all the fridges because they had fancy drinks in their fridges, and we had like Screech. It's probably about as good as it got.
I remember that in Iraq. You used to, we'd be sitting there. You get your 1 litre of water a day that you had to walk half a mile to go and collect from some store. By the time you got back, you drunk half it, and the rest of it was just so tepid, it was so warm. Then you look over the wire and see some Yank sort of just walking past with his Burger King, and his big jumbo Coke. You bastards! So,
sat in like an ice bath.
Yeah, didn't feel guilty robbing them.
To get water.
I know. It's an odd, but I think things did improve. But I mean, Helmand itself. I mean, the size of that. I mean, people trying to put it into perspective. There was like 10,000 British soldiers out there, of which, let's say, 50% of those were actual war fighters like yourself. But the Helmand Province is something like the size of the United Kingdom or something, isn't it? It's a huge area. And
before we left, it was absolutely massive.
And so,
crazy.
So you're obviously out there patrolling, doing the hearts and minds of the locals, and at this point, it's very much seen as that hearts and minds and not a war fighting role.
Yeah, we had a few contacts, and it was obviously the Taliban finding out what we could do and what we couldn't do. Kind of patrolling around, finding minefields that weren't plotted on maps, which was pretty sketchy at one point when the whole squadron of 30 wagons drove into a minefield.
Jeez.
I do remember that. But
you front wagon?
We only found that out because one of the guy, no, I wasn't there, but one of the wagons that was, his track clipped the side of it, and it literally blew the side of his wagon out. And at that point, it was all like, wow, this is pretty sketchy.
Yeah.
Every driver was then out on his belt buckle for the next 4 hours trying to find his way out.
Wow. I mean, that's
mine clearance, which I
remember doing the mine clearance training, thinking, I hope I never have to actually employ this skill. It's something. The guys that do
doing that with a tank behind you, hoping that you'd cleared it properly.
That's good. Well, especially the size. Sketchy. Some of those IEDs. I mean, I was reading a book a little while back by some of the bomb disposal guys, and was it painting the sand or something they call it? Because if they get it wrong when they're sort of searching for the mines, that's it. You won't know a thing. But
at that stage, it was like Russian mines, so it was the IEDs weren't around at that point. We didn't really bump into any of those, fortunately. It was only until later on when we got near the cities nearer to Musakala area that they started using IEDs to kind of hold us back.
So these are all the mines, like the legacy mines from the Russians back in the 80s that they've left there.
Exactly, yeah. Then, which weren't plotted on maps, which is pretty crazy.
No, well, that's the Russians, wasn't it? I think they just dropped them indiscriminately. But then the IEDs, the improvised explosive devices, they became much more commonplace, and obviously the Taliban and some of their outside supporters, Iran and whoever else is sort of getting there behind the scenes, sort of proxy war. That's when it got lethal, and they really sort of upped their game, because obviously they were just watching you, as you said earlier on. It's just the tactics and how you operate, how do you move, what your harbour area is like, and just gathering all that intelligence.
Yeah, I remember sitting at a FOB, which is a forward observation base. We basically looking onto a valley, and at that point it was kind of changing daily on what we could do as far as contacting and all the rest of it. But we were sat in this FOB, and you'd basically have to plot every IED that you watched them set until the morning. We'd then go out and take them all out, which is crazy.
I mean, did you have the snipers there, sort of taking out Taliban as they were laying? Or
no, because at that point they couldn't. But rules of engagement said that we couldn't engage unless we saw, the right thing to be doing.
Yeah, no, it was crazy, wasn't it? I mean, reading the card, Are they shooting at you?
Yeah.
No. Is your life in
What can you
imminent
see?
danger? Well, no, but
Yeah.
it will be if I walk out the gate. And
Madness.
yeah, it was one hair behind the back. So
Yeah, that's
obviously,
it. So going into the incident, 1st of August, we'd been out on the ground, as I said, for 2 weeks, and heading towards Mustakala, basically, and with the end goal of helping the Danish to get their rations has been ambushed daily, so they couldn't get their rations from the area, and as we approached Mustakala, which is a built up, from what I remember, we parked up on top of the hill, and as we looked over it, it was all built up, big sand walls, sort of 10 foot odd high, higher than the tank, and realised that the only way to the point where the Danish were was straight through the middle. So we hatched down, we all locked down, and as we drove into the middle of Mustakala, there's like a little mud bridge, which is where all the main traffic went. So at that point, the village was completely dead, which we kind of knew things weren't right. We couldn't see any locals around. We was kind of waiting for something to kick off, and as we drove into the village, I was the middle wagon, and the front wagon went through, and as I drove over, an IED detonated, which tore my wagon straight in half, and the ambush then kicked off. They shot rocket grenades at the first wagon, which disabled that one, not killing the guys in it, fortunately. As at that point, they then shot rocket grenades at me, and I was kind of watching the guys. Literally looked at him in the eyes as he shot me, and the engine sort of blew up, and that's what engulfed me in flames. At that point, I realised that the guys in the back were killed, and as I tried to climb out, or as I did climb out, I was shot twice in my right leg as I ran to cover, all at the same time as trying to put myself out and trying to figure out where to go and what to do.
So, I mean, this is unbelievable. 1 minute you're driving down through Mustakala, something's not quite right. Obviously, your nerves are on edge, and I mean, this is happening in a matter of seconds. I imagine the explosion, the vehicle was sort of in half, and you're
it felt like hours. Time shot by, and it all kicked off pretty quickly.
So
from, as we say, driving down the hill to just everything kicking off. Didn't know where we were going.
I mean, one hell of a contact. I mean, it's not something you can practice for. I mean,
no.
What does it say? The best laid plans don't survive first contact.
That's it. Yeah.
So then, did you manage to put yourself out? Were your oppos there to sort of help, sort of put out the flames?
So at that point, I realised that there was a sort of gully and a small wall behind us. Well, it's kind of running alongside us, and I just instantly just run in front of the wagon, run down towards this gully, thinking, if I get down behind that wall, hopefully the ambush is right on top of us, so I'll try and get as far away as possible. So I got down behind this wall, and at that point I could still feel ammo and bullets hitting around me. So I thought, well, they must be still near me somewhere. And I just remember having the troop leader's pistol with me, and that was kind of it, really. Sort of let loose with that for a little bit, and fortunately things stopped. So just then hoped that someone would find me from that point.
Which obviously they came. So your teammates sort of came and found you. Your other members of the troop.
Yeah. So what I know now is obviously the guys in the front wagon then decided, well, we've got to get out. So they fought through the firefight back towards me, or back towards the wagon. Realised that I was missing. At that point, they thought I'd been blown out somewhere. So then done a quick sweep, couldn't find me, and then the guys in the rear wagon who had gone back up the hill to give cover and fire kind of saw, like, well, it was obviously me, but at that point I was burnt. So they kind of saw this figure near the wall, and then that's how they found me. The guys in the front wagon then run over to me, and one of the blokes picked me up, and we'd done one. But it was kind of sort of 5 minutes after that, they put me on the front decks, and I remember the bullet wound hurt more than anything else, which is surreal, really, having just been burnt as well. But I suppose all the nerve endings are gone. So my leg, I remember one of the guys leaning on it as I was on the front decks. He's kind of holding on me, and I was going, my leg. And he was thinking, that's the last your troubles, mate. At that point, I didn't know that. I was just thinking, my leg.
Get the morphine in. I mean, what do they do?
Yeah.
So the guys sort of managed to stabilise you on the ground. The firefight's over at this point, is it? They've sort of secured the area?
The firefight still, we just pulled out. So at that point, things went quiet and they sort of dispersed. We were on this rear wagon, then we were on the front of the wagon, and I remember it going full speed backwards, and got to where the troop section was waiting, and I just remember it felt like hours again, and I could hear the Chinook coming over, and that was me then. They obviously gave me morphine. I remember a nurse on the back of the Chinook saying, stay with us. And I said, oh man, I'm hurting now. And that was me.
That's an incredible story. I mean, obviously you were injured. You're the only survivor from your wagon. Was there three others that passed on that?
Yeah, three others. Unfortunately, one of the guys had got in there a few days before. He was, I forget his actual job. I think he was like the foo. One of 7 RHA guys. So he had got in there a few days before, and he was coming out to support us basically, and calling in what they do. I didn't know his job exactly, but I knew that he'd only just got in the wagon, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that was discussed last year when we were in Arnhem, wasn't it? And a friend of ours who was obviously one of the 7 para lads, he never put two and two together, realised that you were in that wagon with his friend, because everyone always thought everyone had been killed in that contact. It was unsurvivable.
Yeah, surreal. I never knew of Martyn before.
Yeah, yeah.
It was even when we got out to New Zealand and met the guy, and he was one of close friends of him.
Of the troopy.
Like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Unbelievable.
It is. Actually, let's just give Martyn
I always
a shout.
say that I was the lucky one to get out. I was the lucky one to come out, So.
Yeah,
me, I was
you are. I mean, you got an incredible family, and they're lucky to have you. So maybe not the driving skills, but so I mean, this. So obviously, you're medevaced in the Chinook back to Bastion. Obviously, they do everything they can to save your life and to stabilise you. Where'd you go from there? Did you get flown to Germany or back to the UK?
No, obviously at this point I'm out, and I'm pretty certain they had to. There was a guy in a colonel, a guy called Bruce. He was one of the obviously top medical guys out in Bastion. I remember speaking to him after, obviously when I woke up, and he said if you don't get him back to Broomfield Burns unit in Essex, then I wouldn't survive. So they just got me back to the UK as soon as possible.
Yeah,
straight into the Burns unit, and that was me for sort of 4 months.
So 4 months
in a coma.
Oh wait, you were in a coma.
Yeah.
So your family. So were you married at this point?
No. I'd met my now wife just before going out there.
So it must be really difficult on both you and on your wife, or then sort of girlfriend, visiting you sort of at the unit. So you spent 4 months in a coma there, and obviously are they operating in the background whilst you're in a coma? Yeah,
so they estimated about 500 hours of medical procedures. So either skin grafts, basically fixed me back together as much as they could. I woke up 4 months later at like 7 stone.
Yeah. What were you like before? Fairly big guy, or?
Normal average build. Love my fitness. That was the hardest thing, waking up and not being able to move for one. And then realising something's not quite right.
Yeah.
At that stage, things didn't really go through my head, because going back to how I was as a person, I was just kind of having a laugh with the staff, and now the nurses are brilliant. Girlfriend was there and family around, and I knew something wasn't right, and I could only sort of look down at my arms, and that was about it really at that stage.
You're completely wrapped up, sort of bandaged.
Yeah. So I couldn't really see a lot. I knew I had a big external fixator on my leg, which kind of held the bones together. So I knew that wasn't ideal.
So, yeah.
And that's probably about all I could see at that point.
And what did they tell you at that point? Did they sort of say what the level of injuries were?
Well, I had to ask. I'd woken up with 75% burns, third degree, and a complex break to my femur.
Yeah. And how about, was there a lot of pain relief, I imagine, still at that point?
Yeah, I didn't really know what was going on, which is the other reason why I couldn't really see a lot. I couldn't move. So I was, doesn't do you a lot of favours when you're in a coma for that long. You then I had to learn to walk. I remember being in a physio bed, and they used to try and sort of jack the bed up, so my body would go like upright rather than laying down.
Yeah.
And at that point, it felt like I was going to hit my face on the floor, where I was going to just go straight over. Because you've been laying on your bed, your back for so long. It's a horrible feeling. Horrible feeling to get used to again.
So you had to go through all this rehabilitation process, which must have taken quite some time.
Yeah, I was in hospital for that full year, pretty much, and then got to Headley Court in the February of the following.
So Headley Court that's the military sort of hospital where
that was the military rehab centre. Yeah, so
at that time it was probably fairly wasn't so busy. I imagine it started to.
No, I was one of the first, so there wasn't very many until it kicked off a little bit further, and other guys came through. So I got to Headley Court in a sorry old state, thinking I was one of the worst. Well, I was the worst, but
yeah, it
wasn't until guys that were worse come through it, then it kind of helps you with your own state of mind,
Yeah, and I imagine your mind must have been all over the shop at that time, sort of wondering what. I mean, it's a complete change of life. From everything you previously knew, it's like, well, what next?
Yeah, what do I do now? Yeah, I couldn't even walk at that point.
And how long were you at Headley Court for?
Until 2014.
Wow. So is that is that 8 years?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
2006. So my maths is almost as good as yours.
8 years, yeah.
So 8 years in and out, and you're still a serving soldier for all that time?
Yeah. Well, basically at that point I was having rehab, stretches, my hands didn't work and my arms couldn't bend, and I had to learn to walk. Everything that they could think of, the army done for me, and then there was no more that they could do. So I'm having the rehab, and then I'm being fixed in hospital, literally being fixed. So I'm having skin grafts, sort of adjustments here and there, and scar management and all that sort of stuff. That went on for a good 6 years until I got to a point where I didn't need as much.
That's a huge amount of time to be there, though. I mean, it must have taken its toll on you and your relationship.
Yeah, we
how
did.
was your other half?
Yeah, that was the hardest bit, really. Come to terms with what to say to her, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 years on, and that's when I was diagnosed with PTSD. Just because it got to a stage where I was in and out so much that my body sort of said, kind of had enough now.
Yeah.
And yeah,
we'll probably
that's the hardest bit, really.
We'll probably touch on the PTSD in a minute, because it seems it's a very common theme with obviously soldiers, especially like yourself, who've been through some massive trauma. And obviously speaking to other guys, the chat we had on the other day, we were talking about PTSD. He has some fantastic advice through sort of how he helps people. It'd be worth you listening to that, and anyone else who's listening to this podcast, look up Steve's podcast, and he had some brilliant words, and it really resonated. So look, let's sort of move to sort of the brighter sort of part. So you come out of Headley Court. So you're obviously you leave the military, and then you think, what next? You've obviously been through a right old roller coaster of a ride. You're a hugely strong character, having known you. So I know you wouldn't just sit around moping. So what did you do next?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to, it kind of comes on to 4 years in when I get diagnosed with PTSD. From that point, I got invited to go out go-kart racing. It was literally a guy who had bought a go-kart and wanted to do something for some guys in Headley Court. So a few of us, there's 4 of us, all in similar state, some amputees. And we went go-kart racing. I absolutely loved it. And that kind of got me hooked on the racing world, It gave me everything that I'd lost. So the adrenaline, the teamwork, and gave me a focus again. And from there, I just got hooked on racing, anything and everything. And raced go-karts for sort of 5 years. And then wanted to go faster and got into car racing.
So tell us about the car racing then. You're a professional racing driver now, so you've got your licenses, you've got a proper team, proper car, pit car set up. It's the real McCoy. I mean, that's big boy stuff, isn't it? You don't just sort of tip up on a Friday afternoon in your banger. It must be quite difficult, sort of learning the racing tracks and everything that goes with it. Yes,
it's literally everything from focusing on what you're doing on the job to like doing your homework, learning the track and figuring out the weather, learning what tyres to use, figuring out pit stop strategy, and I absolutely love it, and it does more for me when I'm at the track than anyone can know of. Really, it's one of those. I've found something that I can do when now I can't be in the army.
Yeah, and it's obviously helped you hugely with your recovery, and you love it, and you're very good at it. And what did you name the company or your race team?
Yeah, so we, as I say, went into normal car racing, and we helped set up a team with just disabled guys that gone through similar. And then just at the start of this year, myself and another veteran started up Stand 2 Motorsport. And it's a motorsport team whereby we aim to eventually, the ideal word would be to do Le Mans. So the first veteran team to do Le Mans.
24 hours.
But the Le Mans 24 hour. But we know it's the hardest race in the world, and to get to that point is obviously a hell of a journey. But why not aim high? So that is our aim. But at present, we're racing in a car called a Praga.
Yep.
And Praga are quite new to UK tracks, and we're very proud to be part of their journey. And it's one of those cars where we've had to learn how to drive a car with aerodynamics, and trying to learn that is a hell of a skill on its own.
But you've been smashing it, haven't you, in the racing car world? I mean, sort of doing a bit of research on it. You're not sitting at the back of the grid. I mean, what did you finish this year at the end of the season?
Yeah, we was at the front of the grid and we finished P3 in our class. So next year we want to aim higher. We want the same car with a turbo, and we want to aim for the championship.
So what's the cost for that turbo? To add that in, or to get the turbo version of the car?
So we need it's $100,000 target really. Mm-hmm. It's big boy toys and it comes with a price, but we aim to work with companies, local companies, corporate companies, and show them what we can do. And we always want to give something back, so it's not an all taking thing. We like to get people to the track, show people what we enjoy about it, and hopefully like people enjoy that as well. You know?
I'm sure they will. I mean, have you got a website or something so anyone who's listening to this can go and have a look? Yeah,
definitely. We've got a website. It's being built at present, but we have got a website being built, and it's stand2motorsport.co.uk.
Okay, and there's plenty of room on the car for a bit of sponsorship.
Absolutely, yeah. Plenty of room on the car, as always. We're quite fortunate to have Coldplay join me for a story that I've done. So Coldplay is part of what we do, and they're big supporters of how we've been going through our journey.
That's brilliant. Do you? That's how Chris Martin and his band.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's fantastic. How did you meet like a superstar like that and get him to sort of come on board?
Well, it wasn't that. It was a case of I'd done a story, and he's from Exeter, and we found a mutual thing, and unbelievably he contacted me, and yeah, that was it. He just wanted to support in some way.
That's fantastic.
Fortunately, it's not
3 degrees of separation. Well, yeah. But then we were at that a couple of years ago at Bryan Adams' concert. I don't know if I should shout about that on a podcast, but and we went backstage and Bryan comes out and he knew you. All right, Martyn. It's like
yeah. It's surreal. He'd done a photo shoot with me before, and someone like Bryan Adams wants to get into taking photos, and it wasn't. I had my clothes on. It's fine. He didn't give me that much on
it. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Mrs. How does Martyn know him? He knows like Coldplay. He knows like Bryan Adams.
I'm like Bryan.
You'll make Bryan, and actually, then we were talking about this the other day, weren't we? And so you probably tell the wedding story.
As in Prince William.
Prince William is you served with him, right?
Yeah. So Prince William and Harry were both new to the regiment when I got injured. So when they was having my tour had come home, Prince William was there, and that's when we sort of got chatting, and I would say became friends, and he invited me to his wedding. Well, myself and my wife at that point.
So you go to the wedding, you sort of tip up. So that must have been quite. You'd never expect that, would you?
Surreal.
Yeah, sort of tipping out. No. So you're in the front row?
Sat in front of Beckham's.
Bet Beckham was a bit annoyed about
John
that.
Opposite me.
He gets to all these royal weddings, doesn't he, Beckham? He gets his MBE on the wrong side, upside down. Bless.
That's it. Loves a free drink, he does. He? He's worse than you.
Well, we're not going to talk about drinking, are we? I think we can embarrass you on that one. But so, I mean, you're at where was the wedding? Was it Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle or something?
St Paul's.
Oh, okay. So he gets the main event then. So you tip up. You're at
it went bad.
At this wedding. You're at the front, in the front
row.
And
he goes, "All right, compo," which is pretty cool. So as he walked in with Harry. Yeah.
So him and Harry like, "All right, compo." What did you say?
Yeah.
All right, mate.
Geezer.
Yeah. Oh, that's unbelievable. Isn't it? Beckham's probably thinking, who's this bloke? And I imagine Elton John was probably floating around there, wasn't he? With his piano or something, ready to do the jingles.
It was actually comparing socks. I went, "Boy, Elton, nice socks," because he had his socks hanging out.
I can imagine they were quite
showing about his
loud.
Crazy socks. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So then you go. you finished the wedding then. Well, this is a great story. So you're at the wedding. Prince William comes up. He's all right, Compo. How you doing, mate? You got Beckham and you're trying to nick Elton John's socks. You got David Beckham sort of nudging you in the back, like, "Oi, I can't see. Your head's in the way. Who are you?
Can I have your autograph?"
Yeah, can I have your? Yeah, exactly. Victoria's probably just pouting around there somewhere. Then you go. Is there like the wedding breakfast or whatever they call it afterwards? Where? So you all go to a room somewhere in a castle or some big.
No, they then had their photos, didn't they? So yeah, we didn't have a function. We didn't have a royal function. I was a bit disappointed after right into him.
Unbelievable. Well, maybe if he's listening to this, you say, look, next time there's a wedding or there's a function on, can Compo come along?
That's it.
With me, +1. But so, I mean, life's been a bit of a roller coaster. It's obviously not been easy at all. But clearly, you've been through the mill. You've picked yourself up. You've done something you absolutely love and created and got off and done it all yourself. You know, motor racing is not easy. I mean, you've got to be on that. You've got to stay fit. You've got to be sort of engaged. I suppose you've got to learn the tracks. It's not something you can just turn up, is it, and do?
Now, as I said, it goes back to me saying I was the lucky one to come out of the wagon, you know. And for me, I'm fortunate enough to be living, literally, and I kind of take every day as it comes and do everything that I can squeeze out of what I've got left.
Well, you've certainly got...
I've met some amazing guys on the way and been very fortunate enough to do all these amazing things. And also I've got an amazing wife and family around me.
Well, you have. I haven't met your wife. I don't know how she puts up with you. Hopefully you don't drink at home, like when we go out, because you can only do 2 beers and your baggage.
Yeah.
But what?
They're your 2 beers that I've got to drink for you, usually.
Isn't going so well. So, I mean, tell us some of the stuff that you've done then, sort of in the last few years. So you've been on some pretty cool expeditions.
Yeah, so done some awesome expeditions with Pilgrim Bandits, and can't thank them enough for that sort of thing. And it gets me out of doing the normal treks and stuff. We kayaked down the Orange River, which was a once in a lifetime trip. Absolutely, it was amazing.
South Africa, is that Orange River?
South Africa, yeah, South Africa.
You just get in a kayak and just kayak it?
Yeah, had a kayak down it, yeah. And there's some big grades, sort of 3s and 4 rivers, which apparently is quite hard, but we just shrugged it off and cracked on.
That seems to be the way. I mean, knowing Pilgrim Bandits a little bit, they, great charity, and it's just kind of, there are no limits. You know, they push you, everyone enjoys it, and it's like that camaraderie. So, obviously, anyone that's listening to this, look them up. Definitely worth putting a few pennies their way. I think you were telling me a good story about this once, about the Yellow River, Orange River. Yellow River's the one that's after a night out.
That's the one that you made.
Yeah, that's the one I'll do. You did. You're with old Tim Collins, weren't you? And anyone that knows him knows he's a bit of a character. What was the story you were saying? Right, you just sort of about a river or something crossing it.
So we'd done this. We've been going down the Orange River, sleeping on the sides. So obviously we all needed a shower. We got to the end. It's bloody hot in South Africa. Got to the end and we had to cross the border, which is obviously the river. And we've all got passport stamps, and we're getting in our kayaks again to get back across. And Tim is a guy that smokes decent cigars, and decent lengths. Looks a bit like the grey guy off of A-Team.
Hannibal.
Isn't it? Hannibal. So anyway, he's smoking a cigar and he goes, "Watch this." Jumps in the river and swims from to the other side, still smoking a cigar. And I was like, absolute badass.
I don't need a passport.
No, exactly.
Crocodiles, hippos, out the way.
Yeah.
That
still
guy's
smoking
a
his cigar.
He's pretty well known, actually, isn't he? He did that speech. So where did you see yourself going then? So you've got everything ahead of you. You've got great family, great life, sort of the racing. You got your health. what do you want to do? You know, fast forward the next 5 years, where do you see it going?
Yes, my health's not all that, so operations are still always on the table. Just because the burns are a horrible thing, and basically your body sort of tightens up. So unfortunately, there'll be more operations down the road, and I'm hoping that we can take our business to the next level and ideally show people what we can do by getting them on track. And that's part of our business.
Yeah, I think that's something I really like to promote, because it helps you and it helps other people as well.
Yeah,
and I think from the mental health point of view, the racing's probably been quite a big saver for you, is it?
Oh, massively, yeah. As I say, it's given me back everything that I'd lost, and that's important to keep my mind busy. Yeah. And I've kind of realised that along the road.
You've had quite a difficult year with the pandemic, I suppose, racing, and it's gives you a lot of time.
It's been difficult for everyone, I know, but we have to get sponsors to go racing, and companies are not coming forward these days just because everyone's obviously having to tighten their belts, but we've got so much to offer, and we're just hoping to work with companies out there that want to see what we're up to.
Yeah, well, hopefully off the back of this, someone will be listening who will step forward and help you even more.
Fingers crossed then.
So one of the things we sort of ask on this show, it's one of the sort of last questions. You know, we've sort of been journeying in your shoes for the last hour, and really appreciate you telling us your story. I know it's not easy, but we sort of say three things that they're your must-haves that you can't be without. What are your three? I was going to lump this on you.
Yeah, family, definitely.
Yep.
Friends and having fun, I suppose they come together. And racing.
Yeah. Exactly. I think the racing is a big part of you, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
That's why I'm not letting you drive any of my cars, because obviously
at the moment you've only got your Landy, so
yeah. Actually, that's broken as well now.
Yeah.
What's the Land Rover? It's probably always been broken.
That's just Land Rover. Yeah.
But man, it's been fantastic having you on, and anyone that is listening, Stand 2 Motorsport, look it up. If you can put any sponsorship, do some corporate. Somebody might be interested. Martyn will sort you out for a day. You get the sponsors up to the track, don't you? And you can do sort of driving experiences and everything. Really flexible. So let's do that. Obviously from us, we're wishing you and your family a fantastic Christmas, and obviously the best of health and happiness. And I'm sure we're going to be catching up pretty soon. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And appreciate your time today.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
That was our guest today, Martyn Compton, on Another Man's Shoes, who we want to thank again for coming on and sharing his story and what a journey he's been on, from the toughest of times in Afghanistan to being blown up, through to the recovery period, the multiple operations. But he's now come out the other side, and he's an accomplished author, so you can buy his book, Home from War. That's available on Amazon, so why don't you buy a copy? It's a great read. He's also on Facebook and Instagram, so you can follow him and continue on the journey with him and help support him in his motorsport. That is stand2_motorsport on Instagram. He's also at Martyn Compton Racing, so search in there and you'll find him. As always, we'd appreciate all your subscribes and follows. So if you're on Instagram, leave a comment, sort of like all our posts. If you're on Spotify, please subscribe to us, or Apple Podcasts. Again, you can subscribe, and you can also leave comments and reviews in there. It all helps. It helps push us up the rankings, and more people can enjoy the show. For now, that's another episode of Another Man's Shoes completed. We hope to see you again soon.